Japanese learning tips with Koichi.
Ooh. Oh, hey, Michael.
Hi, Koichi.
What's up?
Do you have any Japanese language learning tips for the viewers today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's get out of here where nothing's happening. And let me tell you a story about a research paper done by Robert Bjork of the Learning and Forgetting, I think, ironically, I've forgotten, department in UCLA. And he talked about learning and the best ways to learn. And one of the things he talked about was about a thing called interleaving. Thinking about that, I was thinking about what ways we can apply that to Japanese learning to make your learning a lot better, a lot more effective. Now, I think most people, we can come over here, they do their studying in batches. So if we just take a look at the flashcard aspect of learning, so that's like probably spaced repetition learning if you follow us. So that's either Anki or Memrise or something like that. Definitely look up spaced repetition systems, SRS, if you haven't ever heard of that before, because it will change your life forever. But anyways, most people, they create decks within these flashcard systems. And I think a lot of people, they batch their studying up by category. So for example, you might have one deck that's just for vocabulary, or one deck that's just for kanji, one deck that's just for radicals, if you take that kanji learning approach, maybe a deck just for sentences, or if you want to get really microscopic, some people might have not just vocabulary, but they'll have a deck for verbs, they'll have a deck for adjectives, they'll have a deck for adverbs, nouns, etc. And it'll get really minuscule, but basically they take different categories and they study them separately, apart from each other. Now, the idea of interleaving is that instead of separating all these things, you put them all together and studying them together. So in the case of flashcards, you would actually be putting, like here, let's get rid of these because vocab fits all of them. We're putting vocab, kanji, radicals, and sentences all in one deck, and they're coming up together. So like maybe a vocab will come up in your flashcard. You'll answer that, and then a radical will come up, and you answer that, and then a kanji will come up, then another kanji will come up, then a sentence will come up. But it's all together. It's interleaved together, not interweaved together, even though that would make more sense. It's interleaved together. Now, the reason why this is a lot more effective compared to studying in batches with separate categories is because you're able to make connections between the items that come up close together. Now, if you're studying, or if you're adding things to your flashcard deck, you're probably going to be adding items that are within kind of the scope of your level of Japanese. So you're going to be adding vocabulary that probably are related to kanji, that probably are related to radicals and sentences at your level. So it's not like you're adding like a really advanced sentence and then a really easy vocabulary at the same time. You're probably adding similar things together. So I put together a little example here just with some words. So you have some vocabulary here like mokuzai, which is like lumber. Then you have the word tree, which is ki. And then these come from the sentence, which aren't as easy as the other ones. But anyways, we have oku, which is to put. And then okiba is a place to put something. And then you have all the similar kanji, which you would add to your deck at the same time. And remember, we're putting them all together, we're mixing them together. And then you have the kanji right here, where when you connect it to the vocabulary, you'll notice that the vocabulary, it's read ki, it's the kunyomi reading. But when you learn the kanji, maybe you learn the onyomi reading, so it'd be moku, not ki. You have zai, which is lumber. You have put, you have place, and then you have the radicals that make up all these things. So when you're learning these kanji, you're using the radicals to learn the kanji. So you'd be learning them at the same time. So you'd have tree, and then this is an alternate version of tree. So another tree. We have our own names on wanikani, and those are the ones I remember. But for this radical, we call this one Sauron's eye. We call this one narwhal. We call this one eye, which is the official one. And we call this one lion because it's shaped like an L, L for lion. So you'd put all these together in a deck, and then maybe you have a sentence that uses all these things, because maybe you got all these from one sentence, and then you'd have the sentence to study. So you mix them all together like this. You put them in your deck, and you're studying all these things together and able to make connections with them. So here's an example. This is totally random, so I hope it'll work. So you pull this up, and this is the vocabulary, not the kanji, the vocabulary for tree. And so that's ki. And then like maybe previously you remember, oh, I studied the kanji for, I should turn this towards you. I studied the kanji for ki, and I remember, oh yeah, it has a different reading. It's moku. So when it's a vocabulary on its own, oh, it's ki. But when it's just the kanji or in a jukugo or combination word, then it's moku. So you're making those connections because they're coming up within close proximity with each other. Whereas if you had them separately set up where you study all the vocabulary once, one day, and then all the kanji at once another day, then you're not making those connections between the vocabulary, the kanji, the radicals, sentences, etc. We have the kanji zai, and then you remember, oh yeah, I just studied the vocabulary ki. When I combine these, oh, I get mokuzai, or even zaimoku, which is a word. Oku, and then maybe you studied the sentence before and you're like, oh yeah, oku had okiba in it, which is a place to put something. Yeah, those are related too. Then lion radical, you remember, oh yeah, it's in oku right there. So like the way spaced repetition works, it's actually making it so that things that you don't know, you're seeing more often. Things that you do know really well, you're seeing less and less often until they're removed from your deck. And it just happens that when you add things together like this, chances are if you don't know the vocabulary ki, and you probably don't know the kanji moku, which is also the same character, but we're learning a different reading with it. So they're going to go down together, which means they're going to show up closer and closer and closer together until you're able to make those connections. And once you are able to make those connections, then you're going to start noticing, oh, okay, these items that are connected, they're getting better together, and they're coming up less and less often because I'm answering them correctly together. So it's really important when you're doing your study, especially within flashcards, to interleave. So that means to mix everything together that you can. Now, it's important to not mix in things that don't have any relation to each other, because if you do that, you're not actually making any real connections, and it's not helping you at all. You do want to interleave things that can be connected to each other. So it's not like you want to have like a mathematical equation that you're studying, or an English word that you're studying for the SATs. You don't want to mix those kind of things in together with Japanese, but anything within the scope of Japanese, you can mix those together, and it actually makes your learning a lot more effective. It'll feel harder, but that's like a whole other topic, actually, desirable difficulty, where actually you want to make learning, it is desirable to make learning difficult, because that's actually better for memory. Now, if you want to go even crazier with these, you can interleave. So this is flashcard study. You can interleave different types of Japanese study as well. So for example, here you go. You have your SRS flashcards. That's this whole thing that I was talking about earlier. So maybe you spend 5 or 10 minutes on this, and then you spend another 5 or 10 minutes on textbook studies, which probably have something to do with the flashcard studies, because maybe you pulled a lot of the vocabulary words from your textbook into your SRS flashcard system. So they are going to be connected. So you see something in the textbook, you're like, oh yeah, I just studied that in my flashcards, and then you're going to know it a little bit better, and you're going to be more likely to memorize it next time, or remember it next time. Or maybe you have some reading that you do, like you read articles or something that's going to be a little bit more advanced, but maybe you're pulling words from reading into your flashcards, or maybe you learned a grammar in your textbook studies that comes up in reading, and you're like, oh yeah, I recognize that, and you make that connection, right? And then, or language shadowing, any number of things that have to do with Japanese learning, you're going to be able to interleave them like this, and then force those connections or those epiphanies between them. Which is just like the other video I made, but a little bit different, where I suggested you force connections between items. And so it's similar to that, but a little bit more random, but still very, very effective. I go into more detail on all of this in an article I wrote. You can click on the link in the description. Definitely give this a try, especially if you are batching your studies up. Give this a try. It's going to feel a little bit harder, but like a month or so from now, you're going to notice a big, big improvement compared to your previous study method. And hopefully it does that for you. And if it does, write a comment or send me an email. Let me know how it goes. But I think it'll be really, really good. So that's my tip for today. Sorry it was so long, but a lot of explaining to do. Bye.